YouTube, how's it going? The Goat House is back, and today we're ranking every single NFL offense line from worst to first, 32 to 1, ranking them as a unit. Really enjoy making this video every single year because I believe you're as good as your unit when it comes to offensive line, and I think too many people kind of look into where the star players at. They kind of go by names, but some teams, maybe they don't have a bunch of huge names and they are the best offense line or one of the best just because they work so well together in their scheme as a unit. So really enjoy making these. You can play along by commenting your top or worst offensive line rankings down in the comments. If you want to rank all 32, that'd be fantastic. Doing all kinds of videos like this. We got position rankings as well, more to come out, and then full coverage during the NFL season. 60K, that's our week one subscriber goal. Let's get there by week one of the NFL. Cannot wait for it to start. Love our full coverage. Love our picks videos, so I cannot wait. Please subscribe. Follow that Twitter. That's a must follow. Check out that podcast as well. There'll be a link in the description in the comments at any video for any of those links that you need. Let's start at 32. Let's start at the bottom. I got the Bengals' worst offensive line in football, arguably the worst last year. I still have them there. I think they get better. I actually, they're last, but I still think they get better. Adding Jonah Williams back, that was a top prospect in terms of the offensive line last year, and they're going to get him not really back. They're going to get him for the first time. Some fresh legs. Hopefully he stays healthy. I guess people kind of ripped them for the Bobby Hart signing, but another year there, he could improve. They got some other young guys that can step up. Michael Jordan possibly can step up, but they also have Joe Burrow kind of calling this offense, running the show. He is a rookie, but it actually could improve the offense line, but mainly it's slight improvement because Jonah Williams is going to be in there, but they are still last. The Rams are going to be 31st. Pretty rough offense line for the Rams. You go back to the year they made the Super Bowl, very good offense line. I was kind of predicting, kind of patting myself on the back here. I was kind of predicting after that Super Bowl that the offensive line was going to start going downhill. Just the way it looked. They lost Roger Saffold there, and I got some guys aging, just weak in some spots, and that kind of was the case. I think a lot of people put too much blame on Jared Goff, but the offensive line was an absolute disaster. I think another one, like I said with the Bengals, I think it actually could be better this year just because some other guys with some experience get to step up, but it's still one of the lower-end offensive lines. Andrew Whitworth's kind of the only strong part in my opinion, and he's really not the same as he was a few years ago. But Austin Corbett, they only had for a short amount of time. He could step up. Brian Allen, if they decide to start him, but it's still kind of a mystery. Blythe probably can start at center as well, but in a pretty weak play from the last couple years from Rob Havenstein on the right side. So it's a little messy over there, but maybe a guy like David Edwards can step up, or Bobby Evans can step up. Some of those young guys can step up, and it's just still a little rough for the Rams there. Washington football team comes in at 30. They lost Eric Flowers, who I wasn't really fond of, but he's probably better than their current options there. Brandon Scherf's back. That's good. Morgan Moses is solid. They're okay at center, just a lot of weak spots, a lot of young guys going to have to step up, guys with not a lot of experience. So that's why they come in there at number 30. The Dolphins at 29, so the Dolphins are arguably the worst last year. They get better mainly because the inside. I don't really think they get better today. Again, these rankings are for 2020 season here, so for this season. They don't really get better on the outside. They draft Austin Jackson. That's good for the future. It's not going to be too much of a difference out there left tackle. Right tackle, I think, will be Jesse Davis still, so that's about the same thing. It could be Robert Hunt, but I think he has potential to be a Pro Bowl guard. So I think that Robert Hunt could start at right guard, Karras at center, Eric Flowers, who I'm not really high on, but they do get better there. So they get better in every single spot on the interior. So that's why they're bumped up a little bit based on where they probably would have ranked last year. The Chargers are at 28. I don't know who's going to play left tackle for the Chargers. It's a big question mark there. Brian Bulaga is a great addition to right, so you get better at the right, but you got worse at the left, it feels like, even though Okung did miss quite a few games last year. The interior, it's pretty rough there. They got some young guys that can step up. They did lose Schofield. They have Pouncey at center, but I feel like he's declining a little bit. So it's just kind of It's the strong part's the right tackle spot, and it's pretty weak other than that. The guard play isn't terrible. It's not bad. Maybe that's what keeps it away from being 32 or down there, but coming at number 28. And the Vikings at 27. Vikings are strange. Early last year they looked really good, actually. Then all of a sudden it just really fell apart. Like, really, that is what, not only last year, but that's what's been holding them back is the offensive line play. Strong part is Brian O'Neill at right tackle. He's actually a very good tackle, but he kind of carries the group. I'm confident Garrett Bradbury will step up at center. He's already a good run blocker. After that, it's pretty rough. The guard position's really rough. They got some young guys that could step up. I don't think Ezra Cleveland, which I love the pick, I don't think he starts at left tackle right away. Probably ends up taking the job from Riley Reeve at some point during the season. But Riley Reeve's kind of been struggling. Early last year, he was solid, though. So I think they got some guys that kind of get worn down. The wear starts to show up. So we probably can see something around the similar thing. Look like a top 15 offensive line, first 6 games maybe. Then it's starting to kind of go back downhill. They really got to protect Kirk Cousins. The Jets actually get better. They're at 26. And they were very, pretty much at the bottom the last few years. They had Mekhi Becton, who could struggle at pass protection early on. I kind of projected that before he was drafted. Didn't really matter on the team, of course. But a very good run blocker right away. He will get better. He will improve his pass protector. But yeah, they got Connor McGovern in there at center. They got Greg Van Roten in there. So they add some guys, Cameron Clark, who can be a depth guy. They add him through the draft, so they definitely get better. Alex Lewis projected to be left guard, I believe. So they added some guys in there that can play. Nothing spectacular. They're still going to be, being at 26, still on the weaker end, but they definitely improved, especially for the future. Seattle Seahawks at 25. The Seahawks on paper are probably worse than 25, if I'm being completely honest, but they have a very good, they have Russell Wilson, they have a very good coaching staff over there, and these guys seem to play better as a unit than the way you would look at them on paper. So that's why they really aren't at the bottom. They almost on paper look like bottom 3, perhaps. But Dwayne Brown's very solid. That's the strong part. He's got to stay healthy. Mike Iupati is definitely declining, but still an okay option there. They add B.J. Finney. They draft Damian Lewis, who I like. I can't have too high of expectations. The right tackle's kind of up in the air. Could be Brandon Shell, who they add from the Jets. Struggled a bit with the Jets. Found his way on the field, though, but you could make the assumption that somebody like that could improve more or play better under Russell Wilson, under that coaching staff. So you could say they got better, perhaps. I like the Damian Lewis draft pick. We'll see. Again, they'll play a little better than how they are on paper, I suppose. The next 8 teams, Carolina Panthers. I actually kinda like the Panthers tackle situation. Why I kind of went back and said kinda is because Russell Okung is good, but can he stay healthy? Greg Little, solid depth. Could he get a chance to play at guard? That's kind of I view him as only a tackle. We'll see. But then Taylor Moton, I like his potential at right tackle. But the interior offense line, the center's okay. Matt Paradis didn't live up to expectations last year, but it was his first year with the team. The inside's pretty rough. Is it going to be Schofield, Dennis Daly? Could somebody else slide? They have John Miller. They got depth. It's just a little weaker on the inside without Trey Turner there, and then Okung could go down. So, if everyone stays healthy and some of these young guards play better than expected, they actually could be surprisingly good. So it's kind of one of those weird teams. Every year, some team kind of goes from worst to first, or you expect them to be bad, they end up being good, or the opposite. That could be that sneaky team there, the Carolina Panthers, especially with the new coaching staff. Could be a better coaching staff in terms of coaching up the offensive line. So that's a team kind of back and forth, kind of back and forth on there. Cardinals at 23. I don't know if balance is the right word, but there's really no giant weak spot. They probably could get better at center. Now then they're going to have Mason Cole perhaps step up, or Galliard, who they drafted a couple years ago out of Georgia. Maybe one of those guys can step up. So I guess that probably is the weaker spot. There's really no really strong spot at all. The guards actually picked it up last year. They helped the running game get going, so I'm actually confident of Justin Pugh and J.R. Sweezy there. With that scheme, them learning the scheme, and that kind of goes into the tackles too. At Humphreys, they got Gilbert, who's been injured, but they got Beachum as well. They drafted Josh Jones, who could play tackle either side or could possibly play guard, so that's a good draft pick. So they got names. They got bodies here. Tackle struggled. I felt like the right side of the offensive line was, they were letting pressure in on Kyler Murray like crazy instantly. Watching games back, remembering that. But yeah, it kind of brings up the scheme again, the system. Interesting system, something these guys aren't used to, and it's not like, you change a system no matter where it is, offense, defense, a scheme. It's pretty easy to go out and just find guys that, change up the guys, fit your scheme, but not offensive line. There's such a shortage on them. So these guys had to kind of adjust to the spread, air out offense here, and that, even though they struggled, it's a tough task. Or maybe another year, another offseason here, they can actually improve a little bit. 23 is definitely better than where they were last year, so I see a little bit of improvement. The Lions are kind of another one of those teams, kind of like I was talking about the Panthers. They could be surprisingly good. I like Taylor Decker on the left side. Big V is kind of the question mark because he was better at guard with the Eagles and he was more of a depth guy who played. But how will he be at right tackle? It's kind of 1 second I'm thinking, he might be pretty solid with this group. Next second I'm like, it's going to be so tough for him. And then you look at the interior. I like Ragnow. Joe Dahl probably going to start at left guard. Right guard's probably going to be Jonah Jackson. That kind of makes me think, Jonah Jackson actually, can't have too high of expectations, but the rookie probably can play pretty well. So it's not a bad offensive line. It's not great. There's nothing great about it. I do like Taylor Decker a lot, but it's one of those ones that you could see it being bad and you could see it being pretty solid. So, and I think the same thing applies to the Bears. 2 years ago, I always talk about this. 2 years ago, the Bears looked like a top 10 offensive line, and then last year, probably worse than this. Their tackles can get back to playing where they were a couple years ago. The interior offensive line, I like Whitehair and James Daniels. They kind of got a question mark at that other guard spot. So, and I guess the question mark at the tackle position as well. Massey was hurt at times last year too. So, but I felt like they were changing blocking schemes last year, like throughout the season, based on what plays they could and couldn't run. I think they were still learning more about their quarterback at that point. It was unfortunate, so that affected the offensive line a little bit. So they could step it up again. I don't see them playing to where they were 2 years ago, but I don't think they would be as bad as they were last year. But but I really don't have them too far off the ranking where you put them last year. But that's because I think other offensive lines are definitely getting better, the ones ahead of them. Jacksonville Jaguars at 20. A lot riding on Juwan Taylor here, who I like that draft pick a lot. I like Taylor a lot out of Florida last year. That was a great steal in the second round for them a year ago. And he can improve and really help this offensive line. Cam Robinson's got to be a little more consistent. They got some big names in the interior. They're good at center with Linder. They got some big names in the interior. Can, Norwell. Those guys can actually, they struggled last year. So can they live up to kind of their hype where they came in there? I think Norwell, we expect definitely what I'm meaning, I guess when I'm saying this is Norwell. Expected a lot more from him. But just like that, he kind of can get back to playing at a high level. So it's another mystery team there. The Falcons, another team I kind of predicted the fall to be coming, and that kind of happened because they were aging. Then they go and kind of retool in the draft last year. They get Lindstrom, they get McGarry, and then they did have some injuries last year, but now this is time where they expect these guys to start getting going, so now they can start climbing up again. So I got them moving up a little bit based on where they were playing, compared to where they were playing the last couple of years, so they could start to improve a little bit here, up inside the top 20. Cleveland Browns at number 18. I see other people's rankings actually, and people are putting them too high. They were definitely one of the worst last year, and to have them at 18, I think plenty enough of a jump up, and I guess an impressive jump up here. I'm not ready to put him any higher than that because I love Jedrick Wills, my number one offensive lineman in the draft, but it starts to get kind of like instinctive and kind of programmed in your head, almost in your feet, how you move. And he's been playing right tackle, and he definitely can adjust. He definitely can play left tackle, but there could be those moments early on, So it's a little bit of an adjustment, especially already the adjustment of going from college to the NFL. And then Conklin at right tackle, they get better with Conklin. Run blocking from Conklin is outstanding for a tackle. Pass protection, not so much, though. I've never been a fan of his pass pro. He definitely needs to get better there. So it's an improvement. It's definitely an improvement run blocking. Pass protection, though, overall on the right side, it's not going to be a huge difference there. Now you look at the inside. I like J.C. Treader and Joel Bitonio. That's good for the run blocking game. Wyatt Teller's kind of a weak spot. That I'm worried about the right side a little bit. And Wills is going to be great, going to have a great career, but could struggle a little bit. So the bright spots early might only be about 2 players there on the inside. So that's why I'm not all in on the Browns' offensive line yet. Not really close to being all in yet, but they're heading in the right direction, that's for sure. Buffalo Bills heading in the right direction. They started that a couple years ago, basically by picking up. I thought Quentin Spain kind of made the difference, really. It's not like the bright spot of their offensive line, but that was almost, adding him, who I thought was an underrated free agent a couple years ago and an underrated left guard, because I thought when he did play for the Tennessee Titans, I thought he was outstanding. So I didn't really get what the problem was, with him and I guess the Titans and with other teams. Cody Ford adding him is another key piece at right tackle, and they added Mitch Morse last year, Deion Dawkins. But it felt like, I don't know why, it just felt like Quentin Spain was a key addition to them, really was, and they re-signed him this year. Deion Dawkins been playing better. It's a balanced offensive line. There is absolutely nowhere near star talent up there, but it's a very balanced, solid offensive line. With some young studs there that could become that good. So they come in at number 17. Now we're getting into the big boys here, number 16. That may be a little surprising, the Denver Broncos coming in at 16 because they were kind of towards the bottom the last couple of years. But I expect improvement here. Garrett Bowles is the weak spot. He holds quite a bit. He's not going to get beat as much as people believe probably, but he holds probably more than people realize. So, I don't know what's worse. I mean, I don't want him getting beat every play, but he is holding sometimes because he's getting beat. But that is the weak spot. He still has a little bit of an upside in him, perhaps. Dalton Reisner was a great pick. This is a guard that's going to continue. He played well as a rookie. He's going to continue to get better. They draft Lloyd Cushenberry from LSU. It's a really solid center that can plug and play. Nothing guaranteed there. There's a chance he can be on the bench to start the year. There's a chance he can play guard. Graham Glasgow could actually play center. But I'm predicting this, and I like that Lloyd Cushenberry at center, Graham Glasgow, who they got from the Lions at right guard. And Jawan James, the key here is staying healthy because he was not healthy last year, but he's a very, very good right tackle, one of the best in football if he is healthy. So Jawan James, that's a kind of a key piece. He stays healthy. If he gets hurt, Broncos aren't going to be as good as 16. If he stays healthy, it's actually going to be better than 16. So key piece there. Steelers at 15, always one of the more consistent, better offensive lines. I think we're starting to see a little bit of, not much of a little bit of a decline, to be honest. Villanueva maybe not playing as good as he was a couple years ago. Still a solid left tackle option. Wisniewski could play center, could play guard. It's a spot you can get better, but okay. Pouncey's been declining a little bit, but solid center. DeCastro's definitely still one of the better ones. Maybe not. I think he was the best at one point. And then Matt Filer there. It's an okay, option at right tackle. So there's no weakness here. There's no weakness. But outside DeCastro, they're not necessarily strong anywhere, and I think there's some guys that are declining, so that's what puts them at 15, but still well-coached, solid offensive line. The Texans got at 14. Maybe they were surprised because the Texans have been known as one of the weaker offensive lines, but I think a big spark this year, and it's really without changing much, and that might surprise people, but they got a bunch of guys that just get better with another year of experience. Laramie Tunsil only going to be his second year with the Texans, and this guy was already improving by year as it was. It's a really solid left tackle. Max Sharping, who played left tackle for Northern Illinois a couple years ago, they switched him to a guard. He was quite impressive down the stretch, and he's going to continue to get better at that position. Then you have Martin and Fuller are kind of the you could get better at those spots, but these are the veteran guys that know the offensive line, know the unit. They're solid. And then Titus Howard, who I liked a lot of the draft last year, there's a ton of upside guy. We kind of thought second round because he's not really that ready right now, but he's got a lot of upside. But the upside says first round. The Texans saw that. This guy is upside. This guy is a bully at times. So this is a balanced offensive line with a ton of upside. There's a ton of upside here. And the problem before was they didn't have the unit complete. And I talk about, it really doesn't matter if you have star players. You got to play as a unit. You got to have a complete unit. And this now finally feels like a complete unit here. So watch out for the Texans. They're going to be much better than people think. Packers at 13. I think the Packers kind of fall down a little bit from where they were last year, probably inside the top 10. Bakhtiari is still one of the best tackles in football. Eldon Jenkins is a bright spot for them, bright future for for them. He's going to continue to get better. I don't have crazy expectations quite yet, but still solid. Corey Linsley at center, Turner, and then Rick Wagner, of course, at right tackle, replacing Brian Balaga. So really there's only one, star, right now, one bright spot at left tackle, and there's just solid options. But Wagner really has been struggling the last couple of years. Maybe with Rodgers, maybe a well-adjusted, well-coached team, maybe Wagner can play a little better. But there's going to be a major difference, I think, between Bulaga and Wagner, especially with Rodgers' game. Wanting to roll out that right side behind, past Bulaga quite a bit. That kind of hurts a little bit. But again, it wouldn't surprise me if Wagner was a little better than he was on the line, just a little bit, nothing extreme. Yeah, maybe taking Bulaga away knocks the Packers down a little bit, but it's so well coached, pretty smart team, especially at quarterback and then with Bakhtiari, that they're still inside the top 15 here. Moving on, we got Tennessee Titans at 12. I mean, it's interesting. You look at the first two. You look at the left tackle and the left guard, Lawan Saffold. This feels like a number one offense line in the making. Ben Jones, solid center, so you're still kind of in that area. The right side's kind of almost killing him in a way. Nate Davis, for a mid-round small school guy, somewhat impressive, somewhat impressive there. So he can continue to improve, so it's not really a glaring weak spot or anything. I guess a bright future here. And then Isaiah Wilson, when they draft in the first round, I think is a really good fit. Dennis Kelly will probably start the year, who got some experience with him last year, and they paid him a bit. But Wilson, they drafted in the first round for a reason. He's a fit. Could struggle in pass protection right away, or maybe for a year or two. Really good run blocker, and that helps with the Derrick Henry game. But mainly the left side's kind of carrying the right, so little off balance keeps them from being top tier, but number 12 is a pretty good number there. New England Patriots, Wynn's got to stay healthy and got to kind of develop. I guess being injured right away, 2 years ago, I guess kind of stopped that a little bit. But kind of a question mark there. The interior looks pretty good. Andrews got to be healthy too. But Tooney and Shaq there in the middle are looking pretty good. That's a good young. They're about right around the same age. Joe Tooney and Shaq Mason, that is, and they're growing together. That's a really good interior, and I expect better play this year. Marcus Cannon, a little bit on the decline. They got some guys that could step up. Maybe Yanni Kajus, I thought was a good pick a couple years ago out of West Virginia. Possibly he can step up. But, I guess health in the tackle play is kind of the question, but Cannon's got some good play in him, and the interior looks really good, so that's what keeps it in the top 12. The Giants, so maybe a little bit of a step up here, maybe a little bold here. The New York Giants at number 10, and there's a number, I got my projection up there of what their starting offense line will look like, but there's a number of things they can do here. I got Nate Solder at left tackle still. I know some other people think, they got Matt Pert, they got for possibly left or right, and they have Fleming who can play right. So they could go up. There's a bunch of different options. Solder's still got a little left in the tank, and Andrew Thomas, there was talk before the draft that he can be a very solid right tackle, and we know he's going to be really good at run blocking out there right away. I think this is the best option, a more likely option. So Solder's got to pick it up a little bit. I think he plays better this year because the unit around him is going to be better. Thomas, if you see him struggling a little bit, nothing major at pass protection early, don't be surprised. It's nothing alarming there, but he's going to be a really good run blocker. The interior, the center's kind of a question, but the guards are really strong here. Wilner Hernandez kind of gets better by default, being in the league another year, and then Zeitler there in second year with the Giants, another year with this good unit, improving unit. So I think these guys play pretty well. I think the run blocking is going to be outstanding. That's where they're going to make their money, which will open up the passing game. Buccaneers at 9, adding Wirfs feels like the last piece of the puzzle to kind of create that unit, because Donovan Smith, we see inconsistency. 1 week really bad, and then 1 week it looks very solid, and we know his potential. I liked him out of Penn State, more than a few years ago. But Ali Marpet's been one of the better guards in football. Ryan Jensen's been one of the better centers. Alex Kappa's an improving young guard, and they had Wirfs, who's a plug and play. He's really solid at right tackle. He wasn't my number one offense lineman in the draft, but I think he'll play like the best rookie this year because he's probably in the best fit. And then he has he's completed the puzzle. The offensive line has got a good coach, got Brady making the adjustments, and that kind of factors in too. Now Brady making the adjustments kind of makes this group that just got completed as a unit a little stronger here. So I like the balance here, and you got some studs right there at Marpet and Jensen for sure. So the Bucs are another team to look out to improve in 2020. Moving on, we got the Eagles at 8. Took a tough blow. Brandon Brooks, one of the very best guards in football, so that knocked him down a little bit, but still inside the top 8. Andre Dillard, still kind of a question. He actually struggled when he played last year, but he was a rookie. I'm not too worried, really. I know he's going to be solid, but he can have those kind of hiccup moments still. So maybe that's weighing him down a little bit. Sumalo, a spot where, I mean, he's solid, definitely solid, but a spot where he could get better. Kelsey, the best center in football. They add Peters, and he's going to play guard, and it's not Brandon Brooks, but it's still a solid option there. Still solid. I just worry about the health there. Then Lane Johnson, one of the better right tackles in all of football. So you got some strong parts, and there's no weak parts, so that kind of equals a little bit of balance. We need Peters to stay healthy, and we need Dillard to improve. So some question marks there. If they had Brooks in there, it would be better than 8. But they're pretty close. These top 7 are pretty good. The Niners add Trent Williams, so they get better at left tackle, in my opinion. There, let's see what he's got left in the tank. Hopefully, he can stay healthy because he does have the injury concern. Laken Tomlinson's a solid left guard. Weston Richburg, a solid center option. I believe Brunskill will play right guard for them. They did move on from Pearson. And then McGlinchey, who's an excellent run-blocking right tackle, could improve pass protection, but he's still getting better every step of the way. So you got some strong parts here. I think Trent Williams, mainly the scheme is really good. It's an easy task, for their run-blocking game mainly. But I think they get better. Another year under Shanahan here with some of these guys. And then Trent Williams better at left tackle. Baltimore Ravens at 6, arguably number 1 last year. They do lose Marshall Yanda, though, so that is tough. The tackles kind of keep them up. The interior kind of brings them down a little bit, and that kind of factors into what I said about Marshall Yanda. But Ronnie Stanley and Orlando Brown, very solid tackle options there. Ronnie Stanley, the best left tackle in football, in my opinion. They got Bozeman, who was solid. Skura's a solid center, and then they add DJ Fluker, which he does have some competition with Powers and Bredesen, perhaps. But I think Fluker could win the job there. A little bit different scheme than where it was in Seattle. I think in terms of the pass protection, run blocking is going to be about the same thing there from Seattle. So it could be somewhat similar. It could be a little bit easier on him in the pass game, actually. So, the Ravens coming in at number 6, but losing Yanda hurts him a little bit. Las Vegas Raiders coming in at number 5. Colton Miller, we need him to improve, but pretty big difference between 2 years ago and last year. So I thought that was a pretty good sign. Richie Incognito, I think one of the better guards in football. Hudson, one of the better centers. And they have Gabe Jackson, who's a solid guard. And then Trent Brown, I think, is one of the better right tackles in football. The second year with the Raiders here, so that's great news. Hopefully he can stay healthy the full year. So this is a very balanced group, and you got, I'd say a couple studs there with Trent Brown, Incognito, Hudson. So that's worthy of a top 5 offensive line right there. And moving on to the top 4 offense lines for 2020. Actually, just last night, Laurent Duvernay-Tardif announced that he will not be playing football this year, so the first player to kind of opt out there, so that was a surprise here. But I still got the Chiefs in the top 4. I kind of talked about throughout this video that some teams maybe don't have those star players, those standout guys, even though Mitchell Schwartz, in my opinion, is the best tackle in football. But the rest of these guys aren't really big names, but they work so well as a unit. And we've seen them beat up throughout the regular season, so those moments obviously weren't that good, but they weren't full strength. And then as they were getting back to full strength as the year went on down the stretch of the season, to earn towards a top seed there, the 2 seed, and then moving into the playoffs, the Super Bowl, ridiculous play by this unit. I thought was the best down the stretch there. Fisher really improved throughout the season. We've seen Fisher and Schwartz playing on the same side of the ball right next to each other, in big moments down the stretch as well. Love to see that. And then a couple underrated guys in the middle, Andrew Wiley and Austin Ryder. Very, very solid interior guys when they're on the field. It's just about staying healthy for the group, but replacing Laurent Duvernay-Tardif, predicting that is actually the tough part. I went a little bold here. Martinez Rankin was a solid prospect a couple years ago, and many thought, including myself, that he would be a guard at the next level and a pretty solid one. But he's been a tackle this far here, and he's been a depth option at tackle. They do draft the Lucas Nang, which I think is a really good draft pick. I think this guy's a future starting tackle, so that adds to the depth at the tackle position. While I think that gives him flexibility to move Rankin inside to guard. I think that's where he can thrive. Algoretti could be another option here, but I would love to see this. It's a well-coached offensive line and a unit that, when healthy, works very well together. So I still like the Chiefs in the top 5. The Saints are at number 3. The tackle duo alone puts them to the top here. Teron Armstead and Ryan Ramczyk. Armstead, a very solid veteran. Ramczyk, already playing as a top-tier tackle, and he can actually continue to improve because he's such a young option. The interior is solid, but this is where it kind of becomes somewhat of a mystery. I'm confident. Obviously, I got him at number 3, but I don't really like to change things that really aren't broken. And we'll have to wait and see for sure. But Eric McCoy played like the best rookie center last year, even though he wasn't really supposed to be, even though he was kind of one of the top tier centers. And he played very well last year, way more than impressive. And it sounds like they're going to move him to guard, but they draft the best center in the class this year, Cesar Ruiz from Michigan, who's a solid option. It sounds like they're going to plug him in at center. Changes to a good unit. Units are, so used to working well together, how everything is. So, kind of changing it up a little bit, scares me a tiny bit. But McCoy should still be able to, usually those guys, they can play center at a high level. They're really good at run blocking. They can play the guard position. And Ruiz, was a top tier center. I would almost prefer them to, we'll see what they do. Nothing's final, but I would almost prefer to keep McCoy where he thrived last year, and then put Ruiz at guard. We'll see. Anders Pete struggled at times last year, but he's still a young, not really a prospect, young player that is continuing to get better. So I'm not really too worried there. I do think the tackle group kind of holds this group to the very top, but it's not like the interior group weighs them down at all. It's a very good young group there. Cowboys are at number 2. They do lose Travis Frederick, but I don't know if the center is really going to make or break this group here. Obviously, you feel more comfortable with one of the best centers in football there, but he's gone. But you still got a really solid group around that center option, which the center option could be Joe Looney or it could be Tyler Biadasz, but I like Biadasz a lot. He dropped a little bit in the draft due to the minor injury concern, which didn't really pop up on the field, or he was able to play. And I thought he was a really good fit. So I think it's going to be a plug-and-play guy as long as he's healthy. The tackle duo is great. Tyron Smith and Leo Collins. Collins going to continue to get better, improve every step of the way. Smith, one of the best in football. And then obviously Zach Martin, one of the very best guards in football. And Connor Williams was a very solid prospect a few years ago, too. So another guy that's going to continue to improve. I think this can kind of be a break. It's kind of weird saying breakout for offensive line, but it really could be kind of a breakout year for him. So I still think they come at 2. There's really no weak spot here, and they got some studs. They got star talent in Smith and Martin, and potential star talent in Collins, and a bright future in the other guys there. But the Colts are an obvious number 1 for me. A great example of a unit that just works so well together. It was kind of completed when they added Quentin Nelson and Braden Smith. I guess Nelson kind of being that star piece, but it kind of, it was a struggling offensive line too with some of these other pieces in there. Costanzo, Kelly, who have been in there. We knew they were good, but at times, they kind of looked like they struggled just because the unit was struggling, and they kind of put it together a couple years ago and finished the puzzle, I suppose. And it's really strong. It works so well together. Costanzo, one of the more consistent, better tackles in football. Nelson, the best guard in football. Kelly, one of the better centers in football. Glowinski, a heck of a run blocking guard. And Braden Smith's been so impressive. I thought this guy would be definitely a guard coming in the NFL here, and he ends up being kind of better than where everyone expected him to play at guard, but at tackle, so that's super impressive. Very good run blocking tackle on the right side. I suppose could improve in pass protection, but then very impressive and very solid. So this is a strong unit across the board. They've been playing extremely well here. So I thought the Colts were an obvious number 1. Complete balance, but some studs there as well. Yeah, that was a pretty easy one for me, even though a lot of these are at the top are pretty close. But yeah, we're gonna see. We're gonna see what happens this year because the reason I say that is because every single year, like there's some random team that goes from like we thought they'd be bad to they'll be at the top, and there's some team that goes from towards the top to the. But we see teams go from first to worst to first all the time. Offensive line, there really isn't like a bunch of them every single year. There's just always like 1 or 2 that do it. So we're gonna see. It's gonna be interesting. I think it has to do with units finally being completed and working so well together. They're just so used to their quarterback, the adjustments, their offense, but just mainly each other. That's why I could appreciate, when offensive line units really come together there. And I almost feel like it's one big player, when I talk about offensive lines, so that's why I really enjoy, ranking these units here. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. Would love to see your rankings down there. Please smash that like button, subscribe to both of our channels. Would really appreciate that as well. Cannot wait for the NFL season. We'll have full coverage here. But that is going to do it for this one. Thanks, everyone, for watching. Goodbye.